I want to introduce you to the audience. Gil Merrick, you were assistant director at USEF.
We've known each other for 15 years. We met in Gladstone for the National Dressage Championships that your farm, Collecting Gates Farms, hosted, sponsored. Time to think about high performance and the things that I learned during my 5 years with the USEF. I started off as managing director for dressage. And in that position, you oversee all of the programs, dressage programs at USEF. 2005, Klaus Balkenhol, the German Olympic rider, was our national coach. And I happen to speak fluent German. And it's not that I happened to. When I was going to college, I had already written Grand Prix. And my trainer at the time said, you know what, if you want more advanced education, this was 1975, he said, you're probably going to have to go to Germany. And he said, and I don't think anybody's going to want to teach you in English, so you better learn German. So I double majored in college, and riding was always my advocation, not my vocation. But my job took me down to Sydney, Australia, and I met a Portuguese master of equitation, a little hidden gem. His name's Major Miguel Tavora. And he was a lifetime friend and student of Nuno Oliveira's. And a lot of people know that name as being one of, along with Rainer Klimke and some others, one of our master trainers in the 20th century. Miguel passed away a few years ago, but I was able to train with him for 7 years. And I said, Miguel, I want to learn how, I said, I can ride Grand Prix, but I want to learn how to train it. And he said, great, buy a 3-year-old horse that hasn't been backed and I'll teach you how to train it to grow. So every morning, 6:30, in the arena, he started early to help me. And I had a lesson every single day over the course of the next years. And I also was able to travel with him when he taught clinics. So I could watch him work with 8 or 9 riders over the course of 5 days. And the horses were at all different levels. So it really rounded out my education as far as, okay, here's a gymnastic program for training Grand Prix horses. Well, in 2005, when I started working for the USEF and I met Klaus Balkenhol, my job was to manage the programs that select and oversee the training of the high performance teams. And Klaus being, of course, the national coach for that. So for the next 4 years, I was literally glued to Klaus's hip. I went to all the training sessions, all the competitions in Europe, and then the Pan American Games in Rio de Janeiro in 2007. I got to go to Aachen in 2000 and I believe it was 2009 when Stefan Peters, the first American to win in Aachen. And I got to think about, okay, I knew how to train a Grand Prix horse, but my question to Klaus was, all right, if you're riding high performance, you're now going for the Olympic level, you want to ride against the best riders in the world and be judged against the best. How do you get there? And because I'd seen a lot of people riding Grand Prix and it kind of looked a little bit like going through the moves and, you know, sometimes pleasant to watch, sometimes not pleasant to watch, but working with Klaus, he did all the work. I was his translator and I organized the training. I wasn't, of course, training at all, but I got to watch him and study him. What is it about Isabel Wirth? Why is she the most decorated rider in history in competition? What is it about her? And he goes, watch her. He said, she rides for every point. She doesn't give up anything in that ring. Even if she has a mistake, she just goes on. She uses every movement in the test to set her horse up for the next movement. She never misses the opportunity to take a corner and make sure her half halt's passing through, make sure the bending around the inside leg's passing through. She uses the corner. She uses whatever exercise she's in to set the horse up for the next one, to get the hindquarters engaged, to get it where it needs to be to do the next exercise. And so I had the opportunity many times to watch Isabel in the warm-up. I also watched Stefan in the warm-up, and a hallmark of their training, these are people who pay attention to every single detail. They miss nothing. And I think that is a distinguishing factor to the people who make it from Grand Prix into high performance with some degree of success. And I was watching both of them. I was watching Isabel and Stefan, and they were in the warm-up at the same time. They're masters they put the horse together for whatever they're schooling. And again, they're at a show. They're not going to school any movements, but they might ask for a few steps of passage or piaffe like they're playing. And then they ride out of it. They let the horse stretch. They let its back relax. They let the horse get back to a very relaxed state. And then they bring it back and they collect it again, and they work on another movement, and then they let the horse out. Frequency that they do these relaxation breaks, it's depending on what they're feeling right then. And that's where they're masters. They know their horse. They can feel every muscle in its body. They know when there's tension, which I want to talk about in a minute, because these are high performance animals. They're like a gymnast at the Olympics. They're like figure skaters. They're like a swimmer. It doesn't matter what the sport is. They're training their bodies, and they get to a certain level, and then they need to push it to the next level. So they're asking the muscles to do more. They're asking the pulmonary system to do more. They're asking their brains to do more, to concentrate more. And so it's natural that there'd be tension that can creep into that process. Well, if you read the books of the 18th century equestrian masters, they all go into detail about the essence and the essentialness of relaxing the horse's jaw. If the horse clamps his jaw and becomes tense, they're going to get tense in the atlas region, right up at the pole between the ears, and they have large jaws. So if they clamp their jaw and that tension goes up into the pole area, it's going to pass through their whole body. It's going to go through the spine, through the neck, through the withers, through the back, and all the way to their hindquarters. So fortunately, I got to see this over the years that I was with the USEF. The judging, which I've gone on record with this before, but it was kind of based on totalists, and everybody wanted the flash and the elevation. And, you know, people kind of overlooked the fact that the extended trots weren't engaged, and that it was a lot of action in the front and not much going on in the back. But he was a sensation. That's what the judges were giving scores for, and that's what people were training towards. And I saw a lot of tension, especially when our team for the Beijing Olympics was in quarantine in Aachen. It's not an FEI event. There are no stewards. People are training every day the way they normally train. I was shocked at the degree of tension in some people's horses. And of course, I was blown away by the relaxation in others. So I'm not saying everybody was riding like that. But over the last years, the judges are now awarding points for harmony, suppleness, elasticity, relaxation. It is so much nicer a picture, and it's so much better classical training and equitation. So if I were a high performance rider, I'd want to make sure in taking care of every single detail about my training that I wasn't missing any opportunity. And I know at some point my horse is going to develop some tension. So I want my horse's jaw relaxed. And that's why when I met you 15 years ago, and you were developing Gumbits as a product and as a company, and I saw what it did to just get the horse to chew, to masticate, to generate that saliva and kind of relax the whole being of the horse, I was blown away. I thought it's such a simple principle, but nobody else is doing it. And you have the endorsement of countless, because I can't count them anymore, high performance riders in eventing and dressage. You have the Morgan Horse World coming on board, Western dressage, which I was very active with Ellen DeBella in getting as a recognized discipline with the USEF. So I'm just thrilled. I told people all the time, if you want to go to the Olympics, I could literally write a book. There's certain things you just have to do. And one of them, I don't think anyone would dispute it. You have to pay attention to every single detail. They all matter. They're almost each as important as the other. So again, to know you as a friend, it's been a wonderful 15 years, and now it feels like we're just kind of getting started. But your product's a huge contribution, and I hope riders give it a try. It does no harm, and it's perfectly legal, and it's natural. It's like, give them a treat.
It's such a fun product. I love it so much. Is it true that the judges scored down for grinding, just for that noise of grinding that some horses have?
Yeah, they should. And again, I'm not a judge, so I'm talking totally out of my school. I have an enormous regard for what they go through, what they do, and how little appreciated they can be sometimes. But the grinding is a sign of tension. And part of dressage is to show a relaxed horse. Years ago, they used to use the phrase happy athlete a lot. I don't hear it much anymore, but what they were going for was they don't want a swishing tail. They don't want the ears back. They don't want to see a horse visibly resisting the aids. That horse should be invited. Debbie McDonald explained this to me beautifully. She was talking about Brentina, which was a very, very large mare. And Debbie's not tall. She was strong. And Debbie said, there's no way I can manhandle that mare around the ring. I'm not going to force her to do anything. She's way too big and too strong. She said, but I can invite her. That was a takeaway for me. I've never forgotten. I invite her to do it.
That's
And that
awesome.
reduces tension, and that should be scored in the ring. And as I said, what I've seen recently is internationally, that is what's being awarded points and scores. And so it's come full circle. It's back to the classical way of riding, and it's beautiful. The horses' noses are now at the vertical, the pole's the highest point. They're really engaged in the hind end for their extensions. And of course, the riders who aren't achieving that, but they're also not getting points. So the same thing would be if your horse is going around the ring, whether it's swishing its tail, its ears are coming back, it's grinding, it's kicking a little bit at the edge, the judges have to mark that down. And, there's a question, should they just mark it down once in the overall marks, or should they mark it for each movement where they so many good friends who are, our top level judges, and it's phenomenal what they do.
So I'm just so excited for kicking off the education piece of Gumbits, and
yeah, well, I think
I'm thrilled you're part of this process for me.
Well, it's fun to be part of it. I've watched you, you launched your brand and you've gone through years of organic growth, word of mouth, you've had influencers, all the right things. And now we have such great, technology and social media and different ways to get the message out, that starting with education makes a lot of sense. You have a lot of endorsements. You have a lot of people who can, give you testimonials for their success. So in addition to brand awareness, it's education. And I think that's exactly what's called for in this medium.
Thank you for